Jake Allen was one of the youngest mechanics on the Great Alliance ship called the Starlight Hope. He was from a small town back on Earth, and joining the Alliance had been the biggest thing he ever did. His job was to repair machines, fix battle suits, and help the alien and human soldiers who lived and worked on the ship. Every day was busy and every day brought something new. On the Starlight Hope, there were many different species. Some were tall and thin, some had bright colors, and some could speak in ways Jake still did not understand. But the most respected, and sometimes the most feared, were the Zorath warriors. They were strong, fast, and proud. Their skin was pale blue, and they moved with a kind of grace that made people step out of their way in the halls. Even the bravest human soldiers kept their voices low when a Zorath warrior was near. Jake liked watching the Zorath, but he also knew to stay out of their business. He had been warned by others, do not stare, do not talk too much, and never, ever make jokes about their looks or strength. Zorath warriors were serious about respect, and they did not forgive insults easily, but one afternoon things changed. Jake was working in the repair bay, fixing a battle suit that had been hit during a training mission. The armor was cracked and dirty, with scorch marks from fake laser fire. Jake was busy cleaning one of the heavy leg pieces when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and his heart skipped a beat. Lyra, one of the most famous Zorath warriors on the ship, was standing there. Her arms were crossed and her face showed no emotion. "Is my armor ready?" she asked in a voice that was both smooth and strong. Jake nodded quickly. "Almost, ma'am." "Just fixing the last part?" he said. He tried to sound calm, but his hands shook a little. Lyra watched him work. She did not say much, but Jake felt her eyes on him. He worked even faster, wanting to do a "Good job, Dob." As he attached the last piece, he glanced at Lyra. She was tall, even for a Zorath, and the light made her blue skin almost shine. Her armor looked heavy, but she carried it like it weighed nothing. Jake was used to seeing strong people, but something about Lyra was different. She was strong, yes, but she was also elegant. There was a story in every movement she made. Jake handed her the helmet, and their fingers touched for just a second. He looked up and smiled, trying to break the tension. "You know, you have the best armor on the ship," he said. "It fits you really well, and, I think you have the strongest legs I've ever seen. Your butt muscles must be made of steel." The words slipped out before he could stop them. As soon as he finished, Jake realized what he had said. His face turned red. He tried to laugh it off, but Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. For a moment she did not move. Then, to Jake's shock, her cheeks turned a deep purple, a sign of embarrassment among the Zorath. There was silence in the repair bay. Jake's mind raced. He thought maybe she would laugh or maybe she would ignore him. But instead, Lyra stepped closer and raised her hand. Before Jake could react, her palm hit his cheek. It was not a punch, just a slap, but it was strong. Jake stumbled back a step, the side of his face burning. Lyra's eyes flashed with anger and something else. She turned and walked away, her armor clanking softly. Jake stood there, holding his cheek, feeling both foolish and surprised. A few minutes later, his friend Kevin poked his head into the bay. "Hey, Jake, you okay?" "I heard a slap from all the way down the hall." Jake managed a weak smile. "Yeah," I complimented Azorth's butt. "I think I'm lucky she only slapped me," Kevin whistled. "Man, you better hide. Everyone knows not to joke with Lyra. She's the best fighter on the ship." Jake nodded, feeling more embarrassed than before. He finished cleaning up the tools and left the repair bay. But as he walked through the halls, he noticed people whispering. Word travels fast on a ship, and soon everyone seemed to know about the slap. Some people thought it was funny. Others warned Jake to stay away from Lyra, but a few looked at him with a kind of respect, like he had done something brave. Jake did not know what to think. Later that night, Jake sat in the small lounge with a few friends. They played cards and talked about home. But he could not stop thinking about Lyra. He remembered the look on her face, and how she blushed before she slapped him. He wondered if he had truly insulted her, or if there was something else he missed. He knew that Zorath culture was strict, but he did not know much about their feelings or rules for friendship. Jake made a promise to himself. He would try to learn more about Lyra and the Zoreth. Maybe he could say sorry in a way she would understand. Or maybe he could find a way to show respect, even after his mistake. All he knew was that his life on the Starlight Hope had just gotten much more complicated. The next day, Jake kept a low profile. He focused on his work and avoided the places where the Zoreth trained. But at lunch he saw Lyra sitting alone in the mess hall, eating quietly. Other humans and aliens gave her space, but Jake felt drawn to her. He wanted to say something, but he was not sure how. So he watched from a distance, thinking about what he should do next. He did not have to wait long. That afternoon, the commander called him to the control room. Jake's heart sank. He thought maybe he was in trouble because of the slap, or maybe Lyra had complained. But when he arrived, he saw Lyra there as well. The commander looked serious. "We have a new mission," the commander said. "Jake, you will be working with Lyra. You are both needed for a special job on the surface of a new planet. It's important, and I want my best people on it." Jake looked at Lyra. She met his eyes. Her face calm again. Neither of them spoke, but there was something new in her expression, something he could not name. As they left the control room, Jake tried to smile. "Looks like we're a team now." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "Just do your job well," she said quietly. Then she walked away, her head held high. Jake watched her go, touching his cheek where she had slapped him. The mark was gone, but he could still feel the sting. And deep inside, he wondered what would happen next. The mission started early the next morning. Jake woke up before his alarm because he was too nervous to sleep. He kept thinking about his new job with Lyra. He had never been on a ground mission with a Zoreth warrior before. He did not know what to expect, and he was worried he might say something wrong again. He hoped Lyra would focus on the job and not think about his mistake from the day before. Jake packed his tools and checked his gear twice. He put on his standard Alliance suit and made sure he had everything the mission report said he would need. He even packed some extra wire and spare batteries just in case. When he got to the hangar, Lyra was already there, waiting by the shuttle. She stood straight and silent, wearing her polished battle armor. Her face was hard to read, but she looked calm. Jake gave her a small wave. Lyra nodded at him. She did not say much, but she handed him a small toolkit she had brought just for him. Jake was surprised. It was the kind of gesture that showed she respected his skills, even if she was still mad about the compliment. He took the toolkit and smiled. Lyra turned away, her expression still serious, but Jake thought maybe she was a little less angry now. The shuttle took off quickly. Jake watched as the ship left the safety of the Alliance cruiser and flew toward the unknown planet below. The mission was to fix a damaged sensor station on the surface. The station sent important signals back to the ship, and without it, the Alliance would be blind to danger. Lyra was in charge of security. Jake would do the repairs. The landing was rough. Dust and wind made it hard to see, and Jake could barely make out the shape of the small outpost as they came down. Lyra jumped out first, moving with her usual strength and speed. She checked the area for danger, then called for Jake to follow. He picked up his tools and hurried after her, trying to keep up. The outpost was in bad shape. Panels were broken, wires were hanging out, and the control screen was dead. Jake took a deep breath and started working, using the toolkit Lyra had given him. He worked fast, but carefully. Lyra stood guard, always watching the hills and shadows. She never let her guard down. Once in a while, Jake looked up and saw her scanning the area. He felt safe with her there, even though he still remembered her slap dop. After an hour, Jake made some progress. He fixed the main power supply, and the control screen flickered to life. Lyra came over to check on him. Jake explained what he was doing, and she listened quietly. Sometimes she asked questions about the machines or how the systems worked. Jake liked explaining things, and soon he was talking more freely. Lyra even nodded a few times, which Jake took as a good sign. Just as he was about to reconnect the last wire, there was a strange sound in the distance. Lyra held up her hand, signaling Jake to be quiet. She moved to the edge of the outpost, weapon ready. Jake crouched behind the broken panels, heart pounding. They waited in silence as the sound grew louder. Then, from behind a pile of rocks, a group of strange animals appeared. They were big and had long, thin legs. Their skin was gray and shiny, and their eyes glowed in the dim light. Lyra did not shoot. She just watched as the animals moved around the outpost, sniffing the air. One of them came close to Jake, who held his breath and tried not to move. Lyra made a soft noise, and the animals turned and ran away. Jake let out a shaky sigh. He looked at Lyra, who gave him a small nod, like she was saying good job for staying calm. Once the danger had passed, Jake went back to work. He finished. The repairs and the sensor station came online. A green light blinked on the control panel, showing that the signal was working. Jake grinned and pumped his fist in the air. Lyra actually smiled just a little. They sent a message back to the ship to report their success. The commander was pleased and told them to stay at the outpost and keep watch until the next team arrived. Jake sat down on a crate, tired but happy. Lyra sat nearby, polishing her weapon. They did not talk much at first, but after a while, Jake tried to start a conversation. He talked about the animals they had seen and asked if there were creatures like that on Lyra's homeworld. Lyra thought for a moment, then told him about the great sand hunters that lived in the deserts where she grew up. She spoke about her childhood, her training, and how Zoroth warriors learned to control their feelings and respect strength above all else. Jake listened closely. He learned that Zoroth do not usually talk about their feelings with strangers. Compliments about the body are private, only shared between close friends or family. That is why his words had embarrassed her. He said he was sorry again and promised to be more careful. Lyra nodded, accepting his apology. They shared some food, simple rations from the ship. Jake made a joke about the taste, and to his surprise, Lyra laughed. It was a quiet laugh, but it made Jake feel better. They sat together, watching the sun go down over the hills. As night fell, the outpost grew cold and quiet. Lyra set up a small shield to protect them from the wind. She kept watch while Jake tried to get some sleep. He was too excited to rest. He thought about the day and how he had learned more about Lyra and her people. He wondered if they could ever be real friends. Late that night, Jake woke to the sound of voices on the radio. The next team was delayed because of a storm. They would have to stay at the outpost until morning. Lyra was calm, but Jake could tell she was worried. Storms on alien worlds could be dangerous. He checked the outpost's systems again, making sure everything was safe. Suddenly there was a loud crash outside. Jake jumped to his feet. Lyra grabbed her weapon and moved to the door. Something big was moving outside, maybe the animals from before, or maybe something else. Jake grabbed a tool for defense, just in case. The door shook as something pushed against it. Lyra shouted a warning in her own language. The noise stopped, and for a long time there was silence. Jake's heart raced, but Lyra did not look scared. She stood tall, ready for anything. After a while, the storm started. Wind howled around the outpost, and rain pounded on the roof. The two of them sat close, talking quietly. Jake asked Lyra about her home, and she asked him about Earth. They learned about each other's favorite foods, games, and families. Jake realized that Lyra was not so different from him. She liked music, old stories, and quiet nights after a long day. By morning, the storm had passed. The next team arrived, and thanked Jake and Lyra for their hard work. As they left the outpost, Jake felt different. He was still embarrassed about his mistake, but he also felt proud. He had done his job, faced danger, and started to understand Lyra a little better. As they flew back to the ship, Lyra sat beside him. She said quietly, "You are brave, Jake, and you do your work well. I respect that." Jake smiled, feeling happier than he had in a long time. He knew things would not always be easy, but he was ready to face whatever came next, especially if Lyra was by his side. Jake and Lyra returned to the Starlight Hope feeling tired but proud. They had finished their mission, but something had changed between them. Before, Jake was scared to talk to Lyra. Now he wanted to know more about her. He wanted to learn about her world and show that he could be a good friend. Lyra seemed less cold than before. She still did not talk much, but she did not avoid Jake anymore. Sometimes she nodded at him when they passed in the halls, and once she even smiled. Jake's friends noticed the change. Kevin said, "You're lucky, man. Most people don't get a second chance with Lyra. She's not easy to impress." Jake just laughed and tried to act cool, but he was happy. He still remembered the sting from her slap, but now it was almost a funny memory. Jake knew he had made a mistake, but he also knew he could learn from it. One day, Jake was called to the training hall. He was surprised to find Lyra waiting for him. She wore her armor, but her helmet was off. She looked serious but not angry. She told Jake that the Zorath were planning a special event, and they needed help fixing some of their equipment. Jake was glad to help. He followed Lyra into the Zorath quarters, a place where few humans were allowed. Inside, the rooms were bright and clean with strange shapes and decorations on the walls. The air smelled different, sweet and sharp at the same time. Zorath warriors watched as Jake walked past, some with curious eyes, others with cold stares. Jake kept his head down and focused on his work. Lyra introduced Jake to her friend Zara, another Zorath warrior. Zara was smaller than Lyra, but just as strong. She showed Jake a broken training machine. He studied it for a while and quickly found the problem. As he worked, Lyra and Zara spoke in their own language, but sometimes they used English for Jake. Jake fixed the machine and a few other tools. He explained what he was doing so Lyra and Zara could learn how to fix things themselves. They listened and asked questions. Jake felt proud that he could teach them something. He realized that even strong warriors sometimes needed help. After the repairs, Lyra invited Jake to watch the Zorath training. Jake was excited. He sat on a bench and watched as the warriors ran, fought, and jumped over tall walls. They moved like dancers, strong and fast. Lyra was the best. She jumped higher than anyone and never lost her balance. Jake clapped and cheered, and some of the Zorath smiled at him. When the training was over, Lyra came to sit beside Jake. She was sweating and out of breath, but she looked happy. She asked Jake about human sports and what games people played. On Earth, Jake told her about soccer and basketball. He even tried to teach her how to spin a ball on her finger. Lyra tried, but the ball was too small for her big hands. She laughed, and Jake laughed too. For a moment, they forgot about being different. The next day, Jake had more work to do. He got a message from the commander. There was a problem with the main engines, and all skilled mechanics were needed. Jake hurried to the engine room, where he saw chaos. Sparks flew from a broken cable, and alarms beeped loudly. Everyone was running and shouting. Jake took charge. He told people what tools to bring and what wires to fix. Lyra arrived, ready to help. She used her strength to move heavy panels and carry big parts. Jake showed her how to connect cables and check circuits. They worked together like a team. The other crew members watched in surprise. No one had ever seen a human and a Zorath work so well together. It took hours, but they finally fixed the engines. The alarm stopped and the lights turned green. The commander thanked Jake and Lyra for saving the ship. Jake was tired but proud. Lyra gave him a small smile and said, "You are good in a crisis, Jake. I am glad you were here." After work, Jake and Lyra went to the dining hall. They sat together, sharing food and stories. Some crew members stared, but Jake did not care. He was happy to have a new friend. Lyra told Jake about Zorath food, which was spicy and sour. She let him taste a piece of dried root from her home planet. Jake's mouth burned and his eyes watered, but he pretended to like it. Lyra laughed and gave him some water. As days passed, Jake and Lyra spent more time together. They worked on projects, trained in the gym, and talked about their lives. Jake told her about his family on Earth and how he missed his little sister. Lyra spoke about her mother, who was a famous warrior, and her father, who fixed machines. Like Jake, they both liked music. Jake played her some old Earth songs, and Lyra shared strange, soft music from her home. One evening, there was a party on the ship. Humans and aliens danced, played games, and ate together. Jake invited Lyra to dance, but she was shy. On her planet, dancing was something only close friends or family did together. Jake said it was just for fun, and finally, Lyra agreed. They danced slowly, moving to the music. People watched, but Jake did not care. For the first time, he felt like he truly belonged on the Starlight Hope. After the party, Jake and Lyra walked together in the quiet halls. Jake said, "I'm glad we're friends, Lyra. I've learned a lot from you." Lyra looked at him and nodded. "I have learned from you too, Jake. You are brave and kind. That is rare." They stopped by a window and looked out at the stars. Lyra said that on her world, the stars looked purple instead of white. Jake tried to imagine a purple sky. He realized the universe was big, and there were many things he did not know. But he was happy to learn. Jake thought about the first time he met Lyra, and how he had made a mistake. He was glad he had not given up. He was glad Lyra had given him another chance. Now they were friends, and maybe something more. As the night grew quiet, Jake promised himself to keep learning and to always show respect. He knew that friendship was not always easy, especially between different worlds. But it was worth it. Jake and Lyra went back to their rooms, both feeling hopeful about the future. The slap was just a memory now, a funny story to tell someday. What mattered was the friendship they had built and the adventures that still waited for them on the Starlight Hope. A few days later, the Starlight Hope moved into a dangerous part of space. The crew felt nervous because this area was close to the border of enemy territory. Jake worked long hours in the engine room, checking all the systems and making sure the ship was ready for anything. Lyra spent her days training with other Zorith warriors, sharpening her skills and watching for any signs of trouble. One morning, the alarm sounded. The ship had picked up a signal from a nearby planet. The signal was weak and broken, but it sounded like a call for help. The commander called a meeting. He told the crew that someone on the planet might be in trouble, but the planet was not safe. It was covered in thick forests, and there were rumors of enemy patrols hiding there. The commander needed a small team to go to the planet, find the source of the signal, and help if they could. He chose Lyra to lead the team because she was the best warrior. He chose Jake because the signal came from an old human-made machine, and he was the best mechanic. 2 other crew members joined them, Zoe, a smart human pilot, and Eli, a quiet medic. They took a small shuttle and flew down to the planet. The ride was rough. Wind shook the ship and rain hit the windows. When they landed, Jake saw huge trees, taller than buildings, all around them. The ground was soft and full of strange plants. Everything felt damp and quiet. Lyra took charge right away. She gave orders in a calm voice, and everyone listened. Jake carried his toolkit and followed close behind her. Zoe stayed by the shuttle, watching the sky for danger. While Eli checked their supplies. They moved slowly through the forest, following the signal on Jake's handheld device. The air was thick and smelled like wet earth. Strange birds called out in the trees, and once, Jake thought he saw a shadow move behind them. Lyra kept her weapon ready and her eyes sharp. After an hour of walking, they reached the spot where the signal was strongest. Hidden under some leaves and dirt, Jake found a small box with blinking lights. It was an old human distress beacon, the kind used by lost ships many years ago. The beacon was damaged, but still working enough to send a weak signal. Jake opened the box and started to fix it. As he worked, Lyra kept watch. She moved quietly, almost like she was part of the forest. Suddenly, she raised her hand for everyone to stop. There was a noise in the trees ahead. The team froze. From the shadows, a group of enemy scouts stepped out. They were not many, but they had weapons. Their leader, a tall alien with green skin and hard eyes, spoke in a language Jake did not know. Lyra stepped forward, holding her weapon but not pointing it. She spoke calmly, trying to talk. But the enemy leader did not want to talk. He raised his weapon and shouted. In a second, everything moved fast. The enemy fired, and Lyra jumped in front of Jake to protect him. Eli pulled Zoe behind a tree, and Jake ducked behind the beacon. Lyra moved like lightning, blocking shots and fighting back. She was strong and fearless, just like Jake had always heard. Jake knew he could not fight like Lyra, but he could help in his own way. He finished fixing the beacon and used it to send an emergency call back to the Starlight Hope. Then he grabbed a heavy stick and got ready to defend himself if he had to. The fight did not last long. Lyra and the team fought bravely, and soon the enemy scouts ran away into the forest. Lyra was breathing hard, but she was not hurt. She checked on everyone. Jake was safe, but his hands were shaking. Zoe and Eli were okay too. Jake looked at Lyra with new respect. She had saved his life again. Lyra looked back and nodded, showing that she was glad everyone was safe. Jake felt grateful and proud to be on her team. They decided to leave the planet quickly before more enemies came. Zoe flew the shuttle back up through the stormy sky. When they reached the Starlight Hope, the crew cheered for them. The commander thanked Lyra and Jake for their bravery and quick thinking. Later, in the quiet of the mess hall, Jake sat with Lyra. He thanked her for saving him, and she thanked him for fixing the beacon and sending the call for help. They both understood that they were a good team, even if they were different. Jake asked Lyra how she could be so brave in a fight. Lyra explained that Zorath warriors were taught to protect their friends and never back down from danger. She said she was proud to fight beside Jake. Jake said he was proud to fix things and keep everyone safe in his own way. For the first time, Jake realized that strength was not just about fighting. It was also about working together, helping each other, and never giving up. Lyra smiled at him, and Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest. That night, Jake could not sleep. He walked the halls of the ship, thinking about everything that had happened. He thought about how much he had learned from Lyra, and how much he wanted to learn more. He knew their friendship was growing, and maybe something more was beginning to form between them. The next day, Lyra asked Jake if he wanted to train with her. Jake was surprised but happy. He met her in the training hall, where she taught him some basic moves. Jake was not very good at first, but Lyra was patient. She showed him how to stand, how to move, and how to stay calm under pressure. As they trained, Jake asked Lyra about her home. She told him stories about the deserts, the mountains, and the big cities of her world. She spoke about her family, her teachers, and her dreams for the future. Jake shared his own stories too, telling her about his childhood, his family on Earth, and why he joined the Alliance. They laughed together when Jake fell down trying to copy one of Lyra's moves. Lyra helped him up and smiled, her eyes soft. Jake realized that Lyra was not just a fierce warrior, she was also kind and caring. In her own way, later, Jake and Lyra went to the observation deck. They watched the stars together, sitting side by side in the quiet. Jake felt comfortable with her. He was not scared anymore. He knew he could trust Lyra, and he hoped she trusted him too. As the ship traveled through the dark space, Jake and Lyra talked about their hopes. They both wanted peace between their peoples. They wanted everyone on the ship to work together, just like they did. Jake promised to always respect Lyra and her culture. Lyra promised to help Jake learn and grow. Their friendship became the talk of the ship. Some people thought it was strange, but others were inspired. They saw that two very different people could become close if they tried. Jake's cheeks still remembered the slap from their first meeting, but now it made him smile. It was part of their story, a story of learning, respect, and something new that was just beginning. The adventure was not over yet. Jake and Lyra knew there would be more challenges, more dangers, and more moments to share. But they were ready for whatever came next. Together, life on the Starlight Hope changed after the team returned from the dangerous planet. People talked about how Lyra fought to protect her crew and how Jake used his skills to save everyone. Many crew members, human and alien, saw Jake and Lyra in a new way. They were not just good at their jobs, they were a team who trusted each other and worked together no matter what. For Jake, things started to feel different. He was no longer just a mechanic fixing machines in the background. More people came to him for help, and some even asked for his advice. He felt proud, but also a little nervous. He wanted to do his best, not just for himself, but for Lyra and the whole crew. Jake and Lyra spent more time together than ever. They had become real friends, and maybe even more than friends. They trained in the gym, fixing things and learning from each other. Sometimes they walked the quiet halls at night, talking about the stars, the future, and their dreams. Jake felt comfortable with Lyra. He could tell her about his fears, and she would listen. Lyra started to open up too. She told Jake about her worries and hopes. She admitted that sometimes she missed her family and her home, even though she was proud to be a warrior. One day, the commander called Jake and Lyra to the bridge. He explained that the Alliance needed the Starlight Hope to travel to a far-off colony. The colony had sent a message asking for help. There was a problem with the life support systems, and the engineers on the colony could not fix it. The commander wanted Jake to lead a small team to repair the systems. Lyra was chosen to go too, to protect the team in case there was trouble. Jake felt honored but also nervous. He knew the job would be hard, and the colony was far from any help. He packed his best tools and checked them 3 times. Lyra got ready too, making sure her armor was clean and her weapon charged. Before they left, Lyra gave Jake a small charm from her home world. She told him it was for luck. Jake smiled and thanked her. He put the charm in his pocket, feeling a little braver. The shuttle ride to the colony took many hours. Jake and Lyra talked the whole way, sharing stories and even making jokes. When they landed, the colony leader met them. She was a kind woman named Dana, with gray hair and gentle eyes. Dana thanked them for coming and led them to the main building. The air in the colony felt thin and cold. Jake noticed right away that people looked tired and worried. Jake and his team started working on the life support systems. The machines were old and had not been repaired in a long time. Jake asked Lyra to help him carry the heavy parts. Lyra was strong, and she moved things that even 2 humans could not lift together. Jake showed the colony engineers how to fix the broken parts and replace old wires. They worked for hours, sometimes without stopping to eat. Lyra kept watch, making sure nothing bad happened while they worked. At one point, there was a loud noise. From outside, Lyra rushed to check, and Jake followed. They found a small group of people arguing near the edge of the colony. A man was yelling at another, angry about the lack of clean air. Lyra stepped in, her calm voice breaking the tension. She spoke softly, but everyone listened. Jake watched as she helped settle the argument without fighting. After that, people seemed to trust Lyra even more. Back inside, Jake found a big problem. One of the main pumps was broken beyond repair. The colony did not have a spare, and the next supply ship would not arrive for months. Jake sat down, feeling the weight of responsibility. He knew people depended on him. Lyra came to sit beside him. She told him about the time she failed a test as a young warrior and how her father helped her try again. Lyra said, "You are?" "Not alone, Jake. We will find a way. We always do." Jake thought for a long time, then he had an idea. He remembered seeing a broken transport in the colony garage. Maybe he could use its pump to fix the life support system. He ran to the garage and found the old transport, covered in dust. With Lyra's help, he took the pump out and checked it over. It was old, but with some work, Jake thought it would do. The whole team helped carry the pump to the main building. Jake worked late into the night, cleaning and fixing the part. Lyra stayed with him, handing him tools and cheering him on. When the sun came up, Jake was ready. He connected the pump to the life support system and held his breath. The machine hummed to life, and soon fresh air flowed through the colony. People cheered and hugged each other. Dana, the colony leader, thanked Jake and Lyra with tears in her eyes. For the next few days, Jake and Lyra helped teach the engineers how to keep the systems working. They shared meals with the colonists, learning about their lives and their hopes for the future. Jake felt proud every time someone said thank you. He knew he had made a difference. On their last night, the colony had a small celebration for the team. There was food, music, and laughter. Jake and Lyra sat together, talking quietly. Lyra said, "You did something important, Jake. I am proud to know you." Jake felt his face turn red, but this time he smiled. He told Lyra, "I could not have done it without you. You are brave, smart, and strong. I am lucky to have you as my friend." Lyra looked away, but Jake saw her cheeks turn a light purple. It made him remember the first time they met and how much had changed since then. When it was time to leave, the whole colony came to say goodbye. Dana gave Jake a small badge, saying he was always welcome there. As the shuttle lifted off, Jake looked down at the people waving. He felt proud and a little sad to leave. But he knew his place was with Lyra and the crew of the Starlight Hope, On the way back, Jake and Lyra sat close, sharing stories and dreams for the future. Jake realized that his life had become an adventure, and Lyra was now a big part of it. He hoped they would have many more journeys together. Back on the Starlight Hope, the commander praised the whole team. Crew members clapped and cheered. Jake and Lyra became even closer after that mission. People from both human and Zorath crews started to spend more time together, sharing meals and working side by side. Jake saw that trust was growing on the ship, and he felt good to be a small part of that change. Late one night, Jake and Lyra met in the observation deck. They looked out at the stars, silent for a while. Jake said, "I never thought my life would be like this. I am glad you are here," Lyra nodded. "Me too, Jake. I would fight for you any time," Jake laughed. "I hope I never need saving from another slap." Lyra smiled, and her eyes softened. "I think you have learned enough," she said, as the ship traveled into the unknown. Jake felt excited about the future. He knew there would be hard times and maybe even danger, but he was not afraid. He had Lyra by his side, and together they could face anything. The days moved quickly on the Starlight Hope after Jake and Lyra returned from the colony. The story of their teamwork spread around the ship. Even crew members who once thought humans and Zorath were too different now started to see things in a new way. More and more, Jake noticed groups of humans and Zorath talking together, sharing meals, and learning each other's language. It made the long journey in space feel less lonely. Jake spent his days working on new projects. He was trusted with big repairs and sometimes even made suggestions to the commander. He never let the praise go to his head. Every time he finished a job, he remembered that he was only able to do it because he had good people beside him, especially Lyra. One day, a message came from the Alliance Command. The Starlight Hope had been chosen for a special peace mission. They were going to visit a large space station where many different species met to trade and talk. The Alliance wanted to show that humans and Zorath could work together. The commander asked Jake and Lyra to lead a small group for the visit. Jake was excited but also nervous. The space station was huge, and there would be many important guests. He prepared his best uniform and polished his boots. Lyra wore her formal armor, shining and clean. The two of them practiced what they would say and how to answer questions. They wanted to show everyone that friendship was possible between their people. When they arrived at the space station, the air was full of noise and color. People from all over the galaxy walked the bright halls. Jake looked around in wonder. Lyra stayed close, always alert, but she let herself relax a little. They met diplomats, traders, and scientists. Some were curious about Lyra's blue skin and sharp eyes. Others wanted to know how Jake and Lyra became friends. During a meeting, a group of leaders asked Jake and Lyra to speak about their experiences. Jake stood up first. He told the story of how he had made a mistake when he first met Lyra and how she had slapped him. The crowd laughed. Jake said that he learned respect from Lyra and that friendship took patience and trust. Then Lyra spoke. She told everyone that she once believed humans were weak, but Jake proved her wrong. She said Jake had a strong heart and that they made a good team because they learned from each other. People clapped and asked questions. Some were hard, but Jake and Lyra answered honestly. At the end of the meeting, the leaders gave them a medal for helping the Alliance. Jake was surprised and touched. Lyra smiled at him and said he deserved it. After the meeting, Jake and Lyra walked through the market on the station. There were foods and gifts from many worlds. Jake tried a sweet fruit he had never seen before. Lyra showed him a small stone from her homeworld, shaped like a star. She bought it and handed it to Jake. He put it in his pocket next to the lucky charm she had given him on the last mission that night. There was a celebration on the space station. Music filled the halls and people danced. Jake was shy, but Lyra pulled him onto the dance floor. They moved to the music together, laughing and smiling. Jake realized that he did not care what anyone thought. He was happy, and Lyra was happy too. When they returned to the Starlight Hope, things felt even better than before. The crew had watched the ceremony on the station and saw Jake and Lyra speaking together. Many people came to shake Jake's hand or ask Lyra questions about Zorath life. Some wanted to know how to make friends with people from other worlds. Jake and Lyra started to teach classes together. They taught both humans and Zorath how to work as a team, how to solve problems, and how to respect differences. Jake showed people how to fix machines, and Lyra taught them self-defense. They both talked about friendship and trust. Soon, more people on the ship started to pair up for work and training. Just like Jake and Lyra, one day the commander called them into his office. He thanked them for their work and told them that the Alliance had noticed the change on the Starlight Hope. He said other ships wanted to try the same things, with teams made of humans and Zorath working together. Jake felt proud, and so did Lyra. They both promised to keep helping however they could. The friendship between Jake and Lyra grew even stronger. Sometimes when Jake was working late, Lyra would bring him a snack or just sit quietly beside him. Other times, Jake would surprise Lyra with something from Earth, a song, a story, or even a simple flower from the ship's small garden. They still teased each other. Jake would joke about how his cheek still remembered her slap, and Lyra would laugh and say, "You learned fast?" One evening, Jake and Lyra went to the observation deck to look at the stars. They sat side by side in the quiet. Jake said, "I never thought my life would be like this. If someone told me I would be best friends with a Zorath, I would not have believed it." Lyra nodded. "I'm glad you made that mistake, Jake. It helped us find this friendship." They watched a shooting star cross the sky. Jake felt happy and calm. He realized he did not need to be anyone special. He just needed to be himself, and that was enough. He was not afraid of making mistakes anymore, because he knew Lyra would always tell him the truth and help him grow. As time went on, the Starlight Hope traveled to new worlds and faced new problems. Sometimes things were hard and sometimes there were arguments, but Jake and Lyra always worked together to solve problems. They trusted each other, and people trusted them. Jake wrote letters home to his family, telling them all about his life and his new friends. He told his little sister about Lyra and how she was the best warrior he had ever met. His family was proud of him and wanted to meet Lyra one day. One day there was another emergency on the ship. A small fire broke out in the kitchen. People panicked, but Jake and Lyra rushed in together. Jake fixed the broken controls while Lyra helped get people to safety. When it was over, the crew cheered for them. Jake and Lyra just smiled at each other, happy to help again. That night, there was a quiet moment between them. Jake looked at Lyra and said, "I hope we always work together." Lyra looked back with a gentle smile. "Me too, Jake. As long as we are a team, we can do anything." The journey of the Starlight Hope continued. Jake and Lyra knew there would always be new challenges, new worlds, and new people to meet. But whatever happened, they would face it together. Jake's heart felt full every time he remembered the first time he met Lyra, the embarrassing compliment, and the slap that started it all. Now, the sting of the slap was gone. In its place was something strong and lasting, a friendship that helped change a whole ship and maybe one day a whole galaxy.